What's up, everybody? Peter X, the so-called for here. Welcome to another episode of All Things Music. And today we're doing the rise, the fall, and the legacy of MTV. So MTV drops, I believe it's August 1st, 1981, at midnight. So I wasn't around, from what I understand, it was only available in a few counties in New Jersey at that time. I probably got hip to MTV definitely by 83, definitely, because I remember the Michael Jackson video. So sometime either late 82 or early 83, I was an MTV viewer. And lot going on. There's a lot to unpack with MTV. So yeah, I've been around for most of the history of MTV and a little more dialed into MTV than I thought. Because I thought, heck, I wasn't doing much with MTV after they stopped doing music videos. But surprise, surprise, I was. But MTV's had a massive impact, a huge impact on popular culture. I mean, it might be, just beyond music. And so, I went and got a lot of different perspectives from other people, many of them younger, on YouTube about MTV. And, to get their views and to sift through all that and to jog my memory, because MTV has done so much. It's unbelievable. But let me go through and give some props to some of these other YouTube episodes by other folks that I kind of, did we would call this a literature review in higher education. So, how MTV went from cool to irrelevant. That right there is pretty common. How MTV changed the world. Yep, it certainly did. These are all, you can, if you type in MTV history in YouTube, these will come up. Why every cable TV channel lost their identity, and MTV was part of that. The rise and fall of MTV. The rise and crushing downfall of MTV. Yeah, but hey, you can find whatever you like in MTV in other places now. That's my comeback to that. How Michael Jackson changed MTV. The incredible story how Michael Jackson broke MTV's racial barriers. There's a little bit of murky history that some folks are putting out on race and MTV, but I'll deal with that. And then how MTV completely lost its irrelevance. And then I will end or sort of do, as I do stuff, I will do a little history in my thing, and then I'll end with Fenn McKenty from Punk Rock MBA, because he has a episode called What Killed MTV. And I like how he approached it, because everybody else is like, MTV fucked up because they stopped doing music. No, but we'll sort of give, not the let Fenn McKenty had the final word, but sort of the final word on all this. But let's go back to the beginning. So as I said earlier, midnight, August 1st, 1981, MTV debuts. Now, interestingly enough, there's only about 250 videos available, music videos available when MTV dropped. So we did a lot of repeats. The first video ever played was Video Killed the Radio Star. A lot of people know that. Pat Benatar had a video that was the second one played. I don't remember which one that was off the top of my head. So, I mean, essentially MTV was, well, they kind of borrowed a video show out of England from the 70s called The Tops of the Pops. And I've heard that before, that show. Never watched, but it was a pretty big show in England. So, and essentially, I mean, MTV was, you know, a radio station, but with videos. So let's talk about the first five iconic VJs, video jockeys: Mark Goodman, Martha Quinn, Nina Blackwood, J.J. Jackson, Alan Hunter, and then of course later Kurt Loder came in with MTV News. We had Kennedy, we had Downtown Julie Brown, we had Tabitha Soren. You remember all those names? Yeah, that's you know. So why did MTV? Well, you remember you know, they had that theme, and then the rocket and the spaceman on, you know, walking on the moon. You know, look, great branding. You know, early on, you know, I like to do branding on the channel. Amazing branding. You know, but for good, I would say till, you know, the mid 2010s, MTV did a very good job of rebranding itself. We're talking 30 to 35 years where they, you know, they constantly were reinventing themselves. So they, you know, the brand, you know, at the start was promoting youth culture, and they did that for a long time, did it very well, influencing youth culture. They were anti-establishment, anti-authority, and they spoke to people under 30. I mean, that's the key to their success right there. Let's see. So going back, oh yeah, MTV was the first basic cable channel to become profitable. So outside the major networks, it was the first one to become profitable. Most, I mentioned earlier, only 250 videos existed. Most of them were European acts because, you know, they had the Top of the Pops to feed, you know, out of England over there. And guess what? Surprise, surprise, record companies did see a correlation between the number of video plays a song got and sales. Surprise, surprise. So yeah, so now let's jump in here and do MTV and race. So when it comes to MTV and race, I mean, you can go type in David Bowie calls out MTV regarding race. So David Bowie actually went on the air. You know, David Bowie is one of the artists who, you know, benefited greatly or made the transition. I'll go through a list, you know, in a little bit about artists who kind of managed the MTV transition well and thrived, and those who didn't. But, you know, he's on here being interviewed by Mark Goodman, and he said, you know, why aren't you playing, you know, videos from black artists? And essentially Mark Goodman said, our viewers don't want to see videos from black artists, which, you know, it was pretty contentious, but check it out. But, you know, when some of these, I mean, they're younger, they weren't around, you know, they've seen the video. I don't know if any books or any definitive things, you have to dig to find the real definitive truth about what happened about that situation. And so some of these younger folks are not, you know, hating on him or taking shots at him because, you know, you have to know where to look when doing the research and you know, living through all that and the fallout and just, you know, following music closely for what, 40 plus years. I mean, you get the real deal. So a couple of these folks made it sound like that Michael Jackson's brilliance and his, you know, his artistic excellence and all this stuff finally got him on MTV. Not the case. It was Epic Records. The president at the time, Walter Yetnikoff, essentially said, you're going to play, videos from Thriller, or we're pulling all our music off of the channel. Now, remember, this is 1982. Just a year earlier, they only had 250, videos. They, maybe it's doubled by then, but you needed Epic Records was huge. It was one of the big 3 or 4. You needed Epic artists, and so that's what happened. It had nothing to do, with Michael's brilliance at first. Michael's probably the one artist who's more, him and Madonna more associated with MTV, because they fed off each other, and ironically, and raised, each other's boat. But, it was not Michael's brilliance. I mean, literally, it came, it was a power move from his record company to get him on there. Around the time that was happening, Rick James was suing MTV to get get his videos on the air. So, I mean, they implied there was a few folks, black artists getting played on MTV. There was no black artists getting played on MTV, to my knowledge, before this. None. When you have when you turn down Michael Jackson, and then, the biggest selling album of all time, you are not playing black artists, period. Maybe 1 or 2 they did. I'm trying to name them, because Michael, is arguably, certainly, of this era, of the MTV era, was the biggest artist in the world. They weren't playing Thin Lizzy. Yes, they had a black, they had a black lead singer, but they, and he was quote unquote rock. They weren't playing Thin Lizzy. Living Color was I don't think they had even released a record yet, a black rock band. Jimi Hendrix is long past, and most of the classic rock folks, from the 60s, the Beatles and, that ilk, the Who, they didn't, but, they had, had run their course as headliner, big time radio and chart topping artists. So, they weren't playing Hendrix. So no, they weren't playing anybody black, period. And one of the other interesting stories that came out in one of these videos, I've never heard this story. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm just put it out there. But it wouldn't be surprising when the attitude that MTV had at the time. So supposedly MTV went to Michael Jackson and was like, we're doing this live, we're doing a live show for, I don't know if it was a charity or, but we're doing this live show. Would you perform? And Michael was like, will you play my videos? And MTV said no. Huh? What? So, yeah, I don't know if that actually happened, but, when go watch David Bowie, Mark Goodman, and in defense of Mark Goodman, he's a VJ. He's not a decision maker. He did the best he could in that situation. It wasn't his fault that MTV at the time was not playing videos by black artists. But I don't know if that's true. Wouldn't surprise me, the arrogance when it came to that issue that MTV had at the time. But yeah. Talked about Top of the Pops and how MTV borrowed from that. But there's also, back throughout the 80s, there was what they called cable access channels. Now in the 70s, you had ABC, NBC, CBS, and a local channel, most big cities that played reruns. In cable's early development, you had what the, cable access channels where local folks could go and do shows. And out of that, in many ways, comes YouTube. If you remember those, and this is mostly a boomer Gen X thing, but, the cable access channel was the very early, form of YouTube, what we see now. But, getting, moving on from race and music videos and that, the early MTV, let's do the numbers for a minute, a little bit, to see how MTV changed from 2008 to 2016. They went from 101, only 5% of the shows on MTV were music shows by 2016, and 101 non-music shows and 5 music. In 2010, they dropped the music from MTV. And as I said, a lot of people say that MTV should have stuck with music. Well, there's no money in music anymore. I mean, MTV followed the money, and people have looked at it and said that MTV never made money off of videos. They made money off of these shows I'm about to talk about. And the one thing too is MTV stopped driving youth culture. I mean, once they lost that connection with youth culture, it was their time was limited as far as being a. But to go back to that argument, MTV should go back to music. As an artist, I mean, artists never got paid for YouTube or doing videos on MTV. MTV never paid them. YouTube actually pays. They don't pay well, but they do pay. And why would you, think about it as a consumer today, why would you sit around and wait for MTV to play your video when all you had to do was go on MTV, type in the video you wanted to see and watch it? It's almost like in a streaming era, radio is stabilized, but listen to radio as your main source of music. Why? I mean, you can go to the exact song you want to listen to on the streaming services. But without YouTube, MTV, let's look at the positives. MTV created reality television, with the real world. So that doesn't exist without MTV. Now, they went overseas and snatched that from Europe, I believe. There's no social media without MTV. MTV was social media for the stars, and some people had the idea, why should you be on a TV show or in a movie or make music to be a star? Why don't we just, essentially, that's not what Zuckerberg was thinking, but essentially, he put it out there and people were like, oh, I can be a star on my own, I have my own platform and, whatnot. Then YouTube came along and expanded on that. But, Facebook and YouTube, they're very different. Those are both children of MTV. Think of the Comedy Channel and everything. Beavis and Butthead, that kind of stuff is now, you wouldn't have, the Comedy Channel certainly, comes later, if not for MTV. So yeah, it's just, just in those two. Bravo, now it's now reality TV. Bravo wasn't like that in the 80s. MTV changed all that. So let me briefly tell you, what it was like early on. I remember vividly, during Michael Jackson Thriller, we'd leave school and rush home because at 5 o'clock we knew the Thriller video would play, and they would advertise. Thriller's going to be played at 5:30 and 6 and 6:15 and 7:30, and hey, it's before the VCR, so if you wanted to see Thriller, you had to be in front of the TV, and ready to watch it. And that wasn't, I mean, that was the main video, but it was like that for other videos too. And so that was always, that's kind of, you had to be there to kind of understand that. But yeah, that's what it was kind of like, in the early days, and how dominant, MTV was on youth culture. I mean, that was, my junior and senior year of high school. So, and then, there's, MTV gives away to Telemundo in 1984, BET in 1983, VH1 pops up. You had the great collaboration in 1986, Walk This Way of Aerosmith and Run DMC. Uh, Hip hop, rap needed, some way to break the glass, to break that ceiling and move on up. And Aerosmith was coming out of, a band that, almost disintegrating and breaking up and trying to define their way. And Rick Rubin, who was, came up, producing in the hip hop world and in the rock world, was like, hey, you guys should get together and do a song. And at first, both were like, I don't know about this, but they did it, and the rest is history. It was a smashing success. Let's talk about, man, all of these shows beyond, everybody thinks of music. My goodness. So, the real world comes to mind. I mean, that started the whole reality TV phase, and the network television is slowly going to live sporting events and reality TV. I mean, I think ABC still up. Fox, has very few scripted shows anymore. CBS does, ABC has a lot, but the majority of these folks are going in a different direction. So you had TRL Live, which was huge. You got MTV News, which that's how we got our news back in the day, not, websites. I mean, the internet didn't even exist until the mid-90s. Punk'd, Pimp My Ride, Headbangers Ball, started in 1987. Beavis and Butthead, Diarrhea, Bully Beatdown, Bacon the Band, yep, Diddy was in that. Tom Green, Cribs, Jackass, 120 Minutes, Unplugged, still love Unplugged. And then we get into the Club MTV, which was Soul Train meets American Bandstand. Then we get into straight up reality TV, Run's House, The Barkers, The Osbournes, Jersey Shore. Yeah. So, what a history, of, all very influential shows. Yeah, it took a quick minute, but we have to also, I think I alluded to, MTV Raps earlier. That was on from 88 to 95. Huge. And then talking about how Walk This Way by Aerosmith and Run DMC led to that. So yeah, very influential. You remember I was talking about how it led into, social media and all this other stuff and reality TV. I mean, there's so much that, as I said earlier, I mean, if you're upset that MTV, they should have just done more music, and MTV's not what it used to be. MTV's out there. You just, it's just in 20 different places now. A couple more things. MTV2 drops in 1996. Forgot to mention Road Rules. I mean, there's so many groundbreaking reality shows that MTV did that, I'm sure I'm gonna miss some, but hey, put it in the comments. There's so many, that's one reason why I did, the kind of the extensive listen of, and watch of YouTube shows regarding the history of MTV, because they did so much and influenced so many things that, I wanted to do, try to be as exhaustive as possible. I think I mentioned punk. I think I mentioned Celebrity Deathmatch. If I didn't, it was hilarious. Loved Celebrity Deathmatch. I think I glossed over Tom Green, but I have to give him, his props. You had 120 Minutes, which is alternative, and Baker's Bowl 1987, for the metalheads out there. Then you had Teen Moms and 16 and Pregnant and all that kind of stuff later. Other tidbits. So the first VMAs were in 1984, Video Music Awards, and of course their movie awards. Do well do well. Michael Bay started off doing MTV videos before he went to Hollywood. Flashdance really synced up and did well with sort of channeling MTV. The original Miami Vice was very influenced by MTV. I mean, Prince, saw MTV and was like, hey, I can do a whole movie like this. And, uh, in some ways, I mean, Purple Rain is a brilliant, take, a long form, version of MTV. Some people, I know, derided it and say basically it was just, it was just a long MTV video and not in a good way. But I mean, that film has stood the test of time. It's there with probably Oliver Stone's, the Doors movie is, considered one of the best, music, whether biopics or whatever of all time. So yeah. And of course, everybody, moans and groans, in these videos and said, now the, music is gone and all MTV is now is, marathons of ridiculousness, which is, I guess, I've never seen it, but it's Jackass meets America's Funniest Home Videos. Now, here's the thing, it does well in ratings. So, I mean, MTV's a business and they're going to follow the money. So, hey, and again, you can find the things you used to you loved about, you like videos, YouTube, you like, reality television. There's Bravo and a bunch of other ones that can fill that need for you. I mean, a lot of other, cable net, channels have rebranded and then taken up the reality television thing that MTV started. So, I mean, they're following the money, again, home, ridiculousness, home video stunts gone wrong. Hey, their job is to make money, and that's what they're doing. So yeah, ridiculousness. Another analogy. So on Unplugged now we have the NPR Tiny Desk concerts. I mean, so NPR Tiny Desk is essentially a rebranded and refashioned version of Unplugged. So here's the thing. MTV never made much money from playing music videos. When they started doing reality television, the profits went through the roof. So, hey. And then everybody stole that from them. So they're going, and then ridiculousness made money. So that's what they're doing. I mean, it's, the other thing that would happen is people would switch the channel when they were not, when they were playing a video they didn't like. So again, MTV was following the money. So the winners and losers, so to speak, from MTV. Well, two biggest ones were Michael Jackson and Madonna, because they understood that medium and thrived and built their careers off it. Not both, great musical artists as well, but MTV turbocharged them. ZZ Top was one of the few to, 70s classic rock acts to get MTV and to thrive. Prince, hair metal, grunge music. I mean, still remember when Nirvana broke and just, I don't know, it was just, as everybody said, it was something new. And I remember, so they wore the grunge, and I remember even hip hop artists, Ice Cube walking around in his flannel shirts, from, in his videos. So, and, David Bowie, I mentioned him later. Later on, Britney Spears, she benefited very much from MTV. Those who did not, the Rolling Stones, when I do, talk about Rolling Stones and branding, knowing the Stones, they probably even tried to understand MTV. They would do videos, but it's like, oh no, that's beneath us. We're just going to stick to our brand and do what we are, do who we are. The Who didn't really go, blend very well into MTV. Well, most of it is because, their last two studio albums for many years was in their early 80s when MTV was on the rise, and so they did not have new material, but they didn't even try to take their old material and MTVize it, so to speak. Alice Cooper surprisingly didn't do he was such a visual artist in the 70s with his live show. And, I know he was pretty deep into alcohol in the late 70s and the early 80s, but even after that. But I don't think Alice cared either. Alice, kind of marches to his own drum. It was just like, whatever, dudes. Big Bruce Springsteen was the one who ignored MTV and thrived the most. Born in the USA, for the most part ignored MTV, but it was it's one of the biggest albums of the 80s. Diamond, 10 million plus easily. And, Bruce was like, MTV, yeah, whatever. Okay, whatever, dudes. So, yeah. So I'm going to wrap this up because Fen McKenty, my man, the punk rock MBA, I go to Beato more, but, Fen is mostly rock, but he just, because everybody's other ones were crying because, if they only did music, MTV would exist. No, everybody borrowed and stole from MTV. What MTV did was revolutionary, and the whole entertainment, and television and internet sphere has changed because of MTV, and it's probably the most, influential, entity when it comes to TV and the internet, and, in the last 40 years. Nobody has, spawned that many innovations, and there's a bunch of channels, basically, running off of the gasoline that, MTV created. So, so Finn breaks it down. And you know what? MTV did not promote indie artists. They played the big artists. So they played top 40. So, yeah, Prince broke. Prince was going to break anyway. And Michael Jackson. They played, they weren't they weren't doing anything revolutionary. They were going to pop radio, and they were, and pushing who the labels wanted them to push. So they were, they weren't, they didn't play Fishbone, in the 80s. That's a group, It took them a while to get to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Not until Blood Sugar, Sex and Sex, that huge album. But they weren't playing the Chili Peppers in the '80s. The Chili Peppers were too wild for that scene, and as I said, they never played Fishbone. When you talk about a great indie artist. Um, Finn said, the music industry, the big labels got pissed when MTV moved away from playing music videos. But again, MTV was following the money. Um, and then he said, I think this is correct, MTV pivoted to a lifestyle channel. I mean, when they, when reality TV jumped off, that's what they did. Um, So what they do, stunt and prank shows, famous family reality shows, short form documentaries. Again, as I said earlier, they became the pre-YouTube. This is why I'm ending with Finn McKenty. This is a great quote. MTV is to content that the iPhone is to technology. Yeah, right there in a nutshell. And here's the thing, and they, in the quick change in economic environment that we now live in. I mean, companies aren't surviving. The economy moves so fast, and technology and everything is changing so quickly. When you're doing something good and you're big and sprawling, like MTV, and it was kind of big and sprawling, people are going to cannibalize you and take, rip off, tear pieces away and then run with it and do their own thing with it. I mean, MTV threw out a lot of breadcrumbs, and a lot of people took those, breadcrumbs and turned them into seeds and planted stuff and did really well for themselves, these other channels. And so, this is bound to happen. So, yeah. Yeah, so I had fun doing this episode. I love my MTV. I want my MTV, parts of MTV, but the parts I want are on YouTube now, and so that's where I'll go to find them. Um, yeah, everybody is in the nostalgia, but what a wild ride, and tip of the cap to all the creative folks, who are, cooking up all this stuff, the good and bad, because I'm not a huge reality TV person, but hey, it's making money. People are paying their bills off of it. It is what it is, and it's a huge part. Once reality TV, comes and that, out of that, folks are like, well, heck, I want to be famous. So there you go. You got Facebook, and you got Instagram now, and you got YouTube, and you have ordinary people, working hard and in some instances doing really good things, and at the best, in the best circumstances, changing people's lives for the better with the information and the work they've done, or feeding into the disinformation, of the information society. It's very interesting. We're an information economy, but it's on, it's not, it's certainly unregulated when it comes to X, and it's not very regulated even on, Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. It is what it is. We have all the information and the world and the history of humanity out there, but we have a lot of bad information out there as well. So anyway, thank you for coming through. This has been a fun episode. Let me hit the close, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I got 5 albums of my own on all the streaming services, the major ones and not so major. Record under the name Exodus, XODUS. My first album is called Book One. I have 2 science fiction fantasy novels and a novella on Amazon. So thank you for coming through, and I will see you next episode.